Someone on your team agreed to that norm. They were in the room. They nodded. They probably even helped write it. And they're not following it. You've noticed, your team has noticed, and right now you're doing the math every team leader does. Is it worth the conversation, or do I just let it go? That math is the problem, and today I'm going to give you a different equation, including the exact words to use. Section 1, the false choice. Here's what it usually looks like. Your team agreed to come to planning meetings with student work in hand. That was the agreement. But 6 weeks in, one teammate shows up empty-handed. Once, then again, now it's a pattern. And now you're stuck between two options and they both feel bad. Say something and risk the relationship, or say nothing and the norm dies. Or you could even hint at it in the group and everyone knows who you mean. From my experience, most leaders pick that door number 3, and the gentle group reminder, hey everybody, just a reminder that we all agreed to bring student work. And the person it's aimed at either doesn't recognize it themselves or recognizes it themselves and feels publicly managed. Either way, nothing changes. So let me name the real villain here, because it's not your teammate. The villain is the gap in the system. When your team built its norms, it built the agreement. And what it almost certainly did not build is what happens when that agreement gets broken. There's no structure for that. So the moment someone drifts, the whole weight falls on you personally, and it feels like a confrontation instead of a process. That's why the conversation feels so risky. You're not enforcing a team structure, you're improvising a personal one. Section 2, the reframe, collegial accountability. So here's the reframe that changes the conversation before you even say a word. This isn't a discipline conversation. You're not the person's evaluator. This is collegial accountability conversation, peer-to-peer, grounded in shared agreement you both have made. That distinction matters because it changes what you're actually talking about. A discipline conversation is about the person. A collegial conversation is about the gap, that space between what we agreed to and what's actually happening. You're not standing across from your teammate pointing at them. You're standing next to your teammate and you're both looking at the same gap. Talk about that gap, not the person. So Patterson in Crucial Conversations and his colleagues have a phrase for the core move here. Describe the gap. Not the character, not the motive, not that story you've built about why they're doing it. The gap, what we agreed to and what's actually happening. And Kim Scott's test applies here. Care personally, challenge directly. They're both baked into this structure. Section 3, the 5 steps and the exact words. And longtime viewers, you already know the skeleton. This is the 4 parts of speech from the previous videos. Frame, illustrate, advocate, inquire. Same structure, new situation. Plus one closing move that framework doesn't give you, and it makes the whole thing hold. Step 1, frame it. Start from the agreement, not from the behavior. The first sentence establishes that this is our agreement, not your failure. You might say, when we built our norms back in August, we all agreed to bring student work to planning. I want to check in on that one. Notice what the sentence does. It puts the agreement in the room before the gap. You're not opening with what they did, you're opening with what we said. And step 2, illustrate it. Describe the gap factually. One sentence, one interpretation. It might sound something like, the last 3 meetings, the student work hasn't been there. That's it. That's the whole sentence. Not, you've stopped taking this seriously. And definitely not, it feels like you've just checked out. Those are stories, and the moment you lead with a story, your teammate has to defend against the story instead of looking at the gap. Patterson and the Crucial Conversation authors call this describing the gap. Not the character, not the motive. What we agreed to and what happened, A factual gap statement is almost impossible to argue with because it's just true. And that's exactly why it opens the conversation instead of closing it. And step 3, advocate. Say why you're raising it. One sentence. It could sound something like, here's why I'm raising it. When the work isn't there, we end up planning around a hole. And I don't want us to quietly learn that our agreements are optional. This is the step that most leaders skip. And skipping it is what makes the next question feel like a trap. If you jump straight from the gap to what's getting in the way, your teammate doesn't know where you stand. Are you curious, or are you cross-examining them? And Bill Torbert calls a question with no stated position naked inquiry. It puts people on the defense. One honest sentence about why this matters to you takes the question out of interrogation territory and puts it back into colleague territory. And step 4, inquire, or maybe even humble inquiry. Ask and mean it. You could say, what's getting in the way? Here's the thing, you genuinely don't know. Maybe they're drowning in a prep. Maybe the norm never made sense to them and they went along with it in the room. Or maybe something is happening at home. You ask because you actually want the answer, not as a setup for the speech you already have planned. And then you listen. Sometimes the answer will implicate the norm, not the person. Sometimes the honest answer is, that norm doesn't really fit how I plan. That is not a failure of the conversation. That's the conversation working. Now the team can revise the agreement instead of quietly ignoring it. And then step 5, recommit together out loud. This is the move that the 4 parts of speech don't give you. Torbert's framework invites dialogue. This step is what turns a good conversation into a maintained norm. So you might say, so what makes sense going forward for you and for the team? The conversation ends with specific spoken commitment. Not a vibe, not an apology, a commitment. They might say something like, I'll bring the writing samples starting on Tuesday. And if that norm needs to change, the commitment is, let's bring this back to the team and adjust it. Frame, start with the agreement. Illustrate, name the gap in one factual sentence. Advocate, say why you're raising it. And inquiry, preferably humble inquiry, ask what's in the way and really mean it. Then you recommit together out loud. 5 steps, 2 minutes of actual talking. The preparation is the hard part, and the preparation is 2 sentences, the gap and why it matters. Okay, one more thing before we get to your Monday move, because I want you to see what's actually at stake here. Every norm your team holds is a promise the members have made to each other. And when a norm gets broken and nothing happens, the team learns something, and it learns it fast. Our agreements are optional. Oof. And here's the part that should get your attention. It doesn't just kill that one norm. It quietly discounts every other agreement you've built. The safety structures from video 6, the dialogue protocols from last week, all of it gets a little less real because the team now knows agreements here, they don't hold. So this small conversation is not small. It's the maintenance system for everything you've built in this series. Teams don't stay collegial because they wrote good norms. They stay collegial because someone was willing to notice the gap and name it with care. That's the job, and now you have the words for it. So here's one small move, and it's private. You're not saying it to anyone. Not yet. Identify one norm your team agreed to that isn't being followed consistently. Then write 2 sentences just for yourself. Sentence 1, the gap, factually. We agreed to X. The last 3 weeks, Y. No judgment, no interpretation, no story, just the agreement and what's happening. Sentence 2, why it matters to you. I'm raising this because of Z. Here's why this is a move and not a conversation itself. Separating fact from story is the hardest part of what you just watched. Once you've done that work on paper, you're not improvising it when it goes live. These 2 sentences are your opening for steps 1 through 3 whenever you're ready to use them. The conversation will still take courage, but you won't be starting from a blank page. Okay, now peer accountability handles the norms, the agreements, the team level stuff, but conversations can't happen at the team level at all. The concern that's personal, the pattern that's bigger than one norm, the conversation you've been putting off for weeks, maybe even months, because nobody gave you a structure for it. That's the next video. Planning the one-on-one hard conversation, start to finish, before, during, and after. Hey, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.